The year is 1905. A young patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland is absent-mindedly staring out the window of his streetcar while it rolls down the Kramgasse.
Kramgasse.
Out the window, he notices this impressive clock tower, and in a moment that would change the world forever, he wonders what would happen if his streetcar were to travel away from the clock tower at the speed of light. Six weeks later, Albert Einstein would publish On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies, introducing to the world a concept which would become known as special relativity, and which uprooted totally humans' understanding of how the world works. Sitting with our thoughts though, just as Einstein did on his streetcar, just as Newton did under his apple tree, and just as Archimedes did in his bath, is something that not very many of us actually do much of anymore. And I worry that our future will be a shell of its possible self, because the people who have capacity to generate world-changing ideas just won't, because instead of staring absent-mindedly out the window of a streetcar, they'll spend all their free time playing Candy Crush or listening to podcasts. Lately I've been taking some steps to kind of create the cognitive space that births good ideas, and to try and reintroduce into my life the boredom that I've previously spent a lot of time and energy trying to drive out. And I think it's working. Before we examine how boredom can enhance our lives, we should first lay out what boredom actually is. Interestingly enough, there's no real widely accepted definition among psychologists and neurologists to what boredom actually constitutes. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to define it as a negative mental state characterized by a lack of actual or perceived stimulation which causes a person to crave novel stimuli. Now, when you're in a situation, say in the waiting room at a doctor's office, where you feel bored, there are, in my view, two broad ways of responding to that: by seeking distraction or by seeking depth. Distraction can come in many forms, whether it's picking up a magazine or deciding to strike up a conversation with the person next to you. Depth, on the other hand, is the purpose of deliberately and consciously allowing yourself to think deeply about just really whatever you've got on your mind, whether it's a work problem, a memory from your childhood, or a date you've got coming up. My contention in this video is that although distraction can be a perfectly acceptable way of dealing with boredom, it's becoming the default, the only answer, and that we are in some way losing the kind of daydreaming and introspection that, whether we realize it or not, is the lifeblood of our own sort of internal lives. If your childhood was anything like mine, you'll remember distinctly how often you were really, really bored. No friends to hang out with, no new toys to play with, nothing at all to do. These days, at least if you know the kind of people that I know, boredom seems to almost have become a thing of the past. Now, if you found yourself alone at a bus stop any time before about 2003, you really had no choice but to let your mind wander. Now though, through incredible advances in technology, we've managed to engineer these incredible devices that are absolutely ubiquitous and that are able to provide endless distraction at a moment's notice. And not only that, but these devices are actually engineered by some of the highest paid people in the world to hold our attention at all costs. If boredom was hunger, what technology companies have essentially done is found a way to put tiny bottomless bags of Doritos in our pockets at all times. Sure, it would still be possible to live a healthy life and resist the cravings, but it's really fucking hard. In the space of just a couple of decades, smartphones and their app ecosystems have completely monopolized every second of our downtime, turning our wait in line at the supermarket into just another opportunity to check what's trending on Twitter. Walking around my city, I'm hard pressed to find a single person that's just sitting with their thoughts. It's always either smartphone out or headphones in. I find myself desperately wanting to be like Jean-Paul Sartre. Well, not in all ways, but in the sense that I want to be able to go to a cafe and just stare out at the street deep in thought for an hour. But at least where I live, it seems unusual to the point of social unacceptability to turn up at a cafe without bringing someone to socialise with or a laptop to do work on. So if boredom sucks so much, then why deliberately reintroduce it into our lives? Well, the short answer is that if you spend every waking second either fully engaged in the task that you're currently doing or fully engaged in your Twitter feed, your mind has no time to wander, to relax and connect disparate ideas. You have no time to think about your life and how you might improve it, and you have no way of generating new ideas. When we're bored, our brain slips into something called the default mode network. Neurological research in this area is ongoing, but scientists seem to think that this mode of brain activity is really key for creativity. People fall into the default mode network most often when they're doing some task that requires minimal mental effort, like walking or doing the dishes. When we fall into this network, our brain activity sort of allows us to go down rabbit holes and make connections that we're not able to when we're, say, focused on listening to a podcast. Everyone says they get their best ideas in the shower, but what very few people seem to realize is that that's because the shower is really the only place where we're not able to take our smartphones with us in case we get bored. When we're in the shower, we are forced to just hang out with minimal mental stimulus, and it's where we reflect on our days and allow our minds to drift aimlessly. And even if you're not a creative, the insight that you can gain by introducing just a little bit of deliberate boredom into your life is huge. I've been trying to sit with boredom a bit lately, and it's paid itself back tenfold. One of the methods I use is derived from Cal Newport's productive meditation practice, where you take a walk with no music or podcasts and dedicate yourself to focusing on a particular problem or idea you're dealing with in your life. Now, some of you in the comments have actually complimented me on my unique ideas. And what I got to tell you is that 90% of those, the best ones that I get, the best connections that I make while out on these meditative walks. Now, before he started his work each day, Charles Darwin used to take a half-hour walk around his stately manor. And although I don't have a stately manor, I can definitely see the value that he got from that practice. I'm not eschewing music, and God knows I couldn't go without my podcasts, but putting aside just 10 or 15 minutes a day where you're not actively consuming content can do wonders. If there's anything I want you to take away from this video, it's this. The introspection and clarity that comes from being bored is incredible. It allows you to think on and improve your life, and it's the source of almost all fantastic ideas. As smartphones have become ubiquitous, moments of boredom in our lives can increasingly be filled by passive content consumption. That has deprived people of this introspective superpower, and this rarity has increased its value as a tool in your toolkit. I seriously encourage every one of you, even for just a week, to try sitting with some deliberate boredom. Go for a walk or a drive without music. Do the dishes without the TV blaring, or wait in line at the supermarket without pulling your phone out. I promise you won't regret it.